The meeting. So welcome everybody. I'm Brian Penny. I am the treasurer of CPUN. And I am leading the meeting this evening. Jeff, our fearless leader president, is out of the country and unable to attend tonight. So I am going to kick off. Mark, if you want to go to the next slide. Just for everyone that is here, CPUN is the registered neighborhood organization for the Central Park community in Denver. We are here to facilitate dialogue and create awareness around opportunities to engage on topics of importance to this community. We help, help people find their way in a process so that residents' questions, concerns, and ideas for better community can be addressed in a constructive and inclusive way. We promote public service, civil civic discord, and collective efficacy, the ability to produce a desired or intended result. At monthly meetings and through the work of our 6 working groups, CPUN facilitates the discussion of key issues with neighbors, engages in proactive problem avoidance and amicable problem solving. CPUN is committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for all members of our community. We are an all volunteer board of neighbors and a registered 501c3. Tonight Mark, if you want to go to the next slide, tonight we have a special meeting, and I think most everybody was aware of this. We are doing a DPS board candidate forum. Carol and Amanda are going to lead that, and after that, we will have some time for public comment. I think there are a couple of other ballot initiatives that would like to speak for a couple of minutes on their initiatives, so we'll do that. And then next slide, Mark, we will transition into our board meeting. We will talk about our upcoming vote for bylaw changes. We're going to have an extensive discussion about our community survey that we're going to be launching. We'll also have committee updates, and then committee questions, and then a couple of other minor items we are working on. So with that, Carol, do we have all the candidates, or should we?
Good question. Good question. We have 7 folks who are joining us tonight who are candidates. And I know that Michelle is going to be late, Michelle Quattlebaum, but she has a spokesperson sitting in for her. Kristen, is that correct? And so Kristen Seidel, I believe, is her name. And so she's going to be responding to questions until Michelle can make it here. And we'll just ease her into the process when she arrives.
Good.
Okay?
All right, take it away.
Very good. My name's Carol Hunter, and I am co-chair for the Education Committee, the CPUN Education Committee. I'm vice president of the CPUN board, and collaborating with me, co-hosting with me, is Amanda Alshouse, who's also a CPUN board member, former board president. She's on the Education Committee, and she is a parent of school-age children. I haven't held that role for a few years, but I have an adult child and remember those moments, moment by moment. I have a very keen memory of what that was like. The purpose tonight is to have our District 4 candidates and our at-large candidates with us to respond to questions about their candidacy and some of the issues that DPS is currently engaged in. And our role tonight, my role and Amanda's role, is we're going to be asking some questions, and I did send some questions ahead of time to the candidates, not all of them, but some of them. And so we'll be asking them questions. Thank you to the Education Committee for collaborating with us. And we're going to be timing responses. And Amanda's has a sign, I've already seen it, and it's highly visible. And then we're going to check the chat box to see if there's any questions as we get further along in the process, probably around 7:10 or so. Anything else, Amanda, that I need to add to that? No.
Carol, for my sake, if you, and I guess for everyone's sake, if you could just announce the amount of allotted time for each response.
Yes,
when
absolutely.
the question is released, that would be helpful.
That was next. The first question is going to be a maximum of 2 minutes. The candidates receive that ahead of time. And then each question that's prepared is a minute or less with a response. And that's what Amanda's going to keep us straight with. And then the chat box questions would be a minute or less as well. Did I cover that correctly, Amanda? Fab. Okay. So thank you so much to the candidates. I can't imagine what it's like at this point in their careers as candidates and what that process is like. I've seen several forums, and so I thank you so much for your energy and your stamina and your willingness to be with us tonight. So as I said, I think probably about 7:10, we'll take a look at the chat questions, and we'll take the last question probably about 7:20. So the question that everyone is going to respond to, and actually all of the questions everyone can respond to, is discussing why you're a candidate for the DPS board. And I wanted the candidates to be really thoughtful and specific. So I want them to talk about their specific skills, the qualities, the values, the experiences that make them a qualified and effective board member should they be elected. And then including what kind of collaborative skills do you have that will work well with the superintendent, your fellow board members, district staff, and all the folks that you will come in contact with in this role. So I would like to start with the three candidates. We can start with Jean and Michelle, or Kristen if she's able to respond to that. Dr. Silva, and then Jane, if she is here, Vernon, and Nikki and Scott. So take it away, Jean.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gene Fashaw. Thank you, CPUN, for having me here today. I'm running because I've spent the last 5 years in the classroom teaching kids in Mount Bello in the far northeast. Before that, I spent a lot of time coaching, tutoring, mentoring, doing a lot of community activism work to uplift the community as best as possible. And then my time in the classroom really highlighted a need to have somebody that understands the needs of all children in the classroom, which are very diverse. There's a lot of folks that have been educators and in the past, and that term educator gets thrown around quite a bit. But I'm a classroom teacher currently, serving the needs of predominantly Black and Brown children for the last 4 years. And this year, a very diverse group of kids over at High Point Academy in the far northeast. And in that role, I have really transformed the school from a very punitive place where it was just a place where kids were expected to follow the rules. And we turned that school into a place that's restorative, where every child can be their true authentic self, so they can focus on learning, and where they feel happy and joyful to be inside of the building. And that's the type of thing we need to incorporate in the entire district, because our kids need it. Every child in the district needs a place where they can be themselves. They're being constantly bombarded with so many messages that we need to figure out ways that they can start sorting through it, give them the tools necessary to figure out the things that they are being exposed to, and make sure that they're able to, like we did at the school that I just left, focus on learning, put all the mental health issues to the side, and be able to deal with those, put all the deficit thought aside, and make sure that our kids are exposed to a learning environment where they're prepared for life after high school. I've graduated from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, a historically Black college. And there, it was important for us to be servant leaders. And that's my complete dedication as a school board member, to reach across board. Oh, okay, I see that. Reach across lines of difference and make sure we're all working together, sitting at the table and disagreeing as necessary to get things done.
Okay, thank you. Kristen, are you going to speak for Michelle?
I am. Thank you so much for allowing me to proxy. I know Michelle is eager to get here, but she works at George Washington High School and needs to be supporting some students tonight and families, but we'll be right over. Why Michelle is the best candidate, I could go on for way more than 2 minutes, but I will keep it as brief as humanly possible. First, she's a mom, and for all of you that are parents on this call, you know the hard decisions that we face every day in DPS. I'm a mom of 2. And she's made those hard choices. She's gone through, should my kid go to the local charter school? Should they go to the neighborhood school? Should they go to the local private school? What does that look like? And what does that mean for my neighborhood? She knows those choices because she's made those choices. Beyond that, she has an undergrad in communication with a focus on cultural communication. So really looking at the cultural center of how we communicate, and a graduate degree in organizational leadership that focuses on human resource performance. That right there has given her the skills. Recently, she had to facilitate a conversation between around sex trafficking, including people that did not believe sex trafficking existed and people who had just come out of it and experienced it. She sat at that table, was a calm voice, was there to listen and respect and have everybody come together and come with solutions. And that is absolutely Michelle and who she is. She is here to find solutions, listen to community, and make sure everybody is represented. Currently, she's working at George Washington, like I said, and her job there is to bring together the staff and the teachers and the students and families and executing the Black Excellence Plan as a community. And that is why she's running and why she should be elected for Denver School Board.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
Good evening, CPUN, and Carolyn and Amanda, thank you both for the invitation to be here tonight, and to all. You know, as I thought about the questions when you sent it to me, and I have been reflecting on this race, I'm glad that these are the questions that we've been asked to introduce ourselves in. Because when we talk about individuals that have been settling and doing the work and leading the work, that is I. I'm informed through my work, through the life experiences that I had in DPS, through the first 14 years of my life, being orphaned by my father, being murdered, and only being raised by my mother, and finding my mother's girlfriend dead of a drug overdose, and my best friend being murdered sitting next to me when I was 14. So immediately I've had this instinct to want to organize and be involved and engaged. And so since the age of 14, I've been getting things done. I think that was one of the interlude questions you asked. And so I was the Safe City Youth Chairman, founded the Safe City Youth Summit that still is in existence today. I worked for the Piton Foundation and wrote the youth development curriculum at 18 with the fund for the city of New York. I ran a Beacons program in Oakland, California, and transformed Lowell Middle School, where I had 3 generations of families addicted to drugs. I testified before the United States Congress and was able to raise $20 million and send 300,000 kids to college. When we talk about individuals that are able and ready to get on the board and get the work done, I have done it. Over the last year of my career, last few years of my career, I get to lead the Colorado Association for Infant Mental Health. I've grown our budget from $117,000 when I took over to now $497,000. In a time of COVID, I raised $400,000, was able to fix the mismanagement of organization, and that's the expertise I'll bring to the board. I'm a policy expert. I've led policy. I've helped draft policy, write policy. I understand the nuances in terms of what needs to take place inside DPS. It's about lifting parent voices. It's about holding the structural system accountable. When we talk about restorative justice, I prefer restorative practice because the word justice still has a negative connotation. My dissertation was in restorative practices, and I was able to transform Guyberson Elementary School and Nass Lowry through my entry to exit program, where we actually go into schools and we look at schools from the entirety of when you enter the school to you exit, everybody, and what does that look like? So back to your question when you said collaborative leadership. That's what I've been doing my entire life. When I was able to raise the $20 million, it was with a Republican president and Republican Congress, and I'm a Democrat. I've been reaching across the aisle, working with those that may not agree with me, and I always hold those accountable too. So I think that's how I've been able to do it, and my skill sets speak for themselves. Ask for you to support Dr. Silva for Denver Kids.
Thank you. Jane, are you with us? All right, Vernon.
Good evening, neighbors. It's Vernon Jones. Glad to be here with you tonight. I want to begin by thanking again Carol, Amanda, and the whole crew for having us here tonight. When I think about why I'm ready to serve on the DPS Board of Education, it has to begin with being the father of 5 kids who all are very different learners, all who have had different experiences in different public schools, all who have gone to charters, traditional, and innovation schools. So from a parent perspective, I bring to the table a very diverse pathway because my pathway into education was not the traditional pathway. I actually got involved with education from my pastoral role, which I've served in for 23 years, serving the Denver community. As I was down the street from Manual High School when Linda Trancy was the principal and Principal Gallegos was at prep, and I would find myself volunteering at both schools, find myself breaking up fights on 28th Avenue, and then found myself falling in love with both campuses and found myself getting involved and using my skills as a vocal music teacher at Manual High School, and then eventually became a leader on their administrative team. One of the things that you said, what do you bring to the table? I'm a listener. I believe in listening. I believe that my opinion is not the only opinion. My perspective is not the only perspective. And when you show up in a space with other directors, that's important that you understand that everybody brings a perspective to the table. They bring life experiences to the table, and you got to be a listener. Secondly, I'm a learner. I don't believe that I know everything. I know some stuff. Well-read, well-educated. I do know some things, but I don't know everything. And so I think showing up as a leader who is first a learner is critical, that you got to go into a space and know that. And lastly, I'm all about liberation. I believe that the system as designed has not worked for Black and brown kids. It does not work for poor families. And so I believe that everything that we do has got to be about liberating folks to live life more abundantly. And so thank you for this evening.
Thank you. Nikki and then Scott.
Hello, Central Park United neighbors. Thank you all so much for this opportunity. My name is Nikki Yalek, and I am very honored to be a candidate for the at-large position on the Denver School Board. Why am I running for this position? I am running because I believe that the DPS board needs a community organizer. I've been a community organizer now for almost a decade here in the Denver metro area. And over the last 10, 15 years, DPS has a history of, unfortunately, on the community level, we see a lot of candidates who run for the DPS offices, and they look very progressive. They look like they're going to be champions of neighborhood schools, champions of teachers' rights, champions of equity. And several times, unfortunately, over the last several years, we've elected folks like that who they got on the board, and they unfortunately became very different. They became far more conservative. And I've proven that I'm something different. I was very proud in 2018 as a candidate for the State House to work with several other wonderful activists in the metro area to lead the Denver Democratic Party in rejection of the education reform movement that, as Democrats, we don't believe in privatization, corporatization, or resegregation. We believe in equity and educators' rights and neighborhood schools, as I said before. And so that is exactly what I look to bring to the DPS board. I intend to be someone who will focus my time figuring out what is the will of the community, and let's make that happen. And let's do it in partnership with the community, because if we don't have that community buy-in, we're not going to be successful in our long-term goals. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of recent DPS history has proven that. So that's part of why I'm running. The other reason, on a more personal level, my partner and I, who's actually in her nursing school class right now over at Regis, she's going to be graduating nursing school next December. We plan on, lots of loud cat sneeze. We plan on having kids of our own as soon as she graduates, and our kids will be mixed race, and I want them educated in a far more equitable DPS than what we currently have. My 3 areas of focus: neighborhood schools, partnering with educators, and giving DPS back to the community. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Hi, Scott.
Hi, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to engaging in conversation with you. My name is Scott Esserman, and I am a candidate for Denver Public Schools Board at Large. And it's important to know that what sets me apart is that after 20 years in the classroom, teaching middle and high school, teaching English and social studies and speech and debate, that I've had the opportunity to be in community. And when I say in community, I served on a variety of committees in the neighborhood, including assisting in opening Denver Discovery School, including assisting, and not just assisting, but writing the innovation plan with the Central Park community for what Northfield High School was going to look like. I went to a whole lot of community meetings where I took notes, listened, and what we incorporated into the plan for that school was exactly what we heard from community. So I've had the experience doing that. I have a son who is in 8th grade at Denver School of Science and Technology, Montview, and a daughter who graduated from Manual High School just this past May. And so I'm a parent, and I listen to parents, and I talk to parents frequently. And I'm a teacher, And those teaching skills are highly transferable. We don't often think of them that way, but those skills that we learn from teaching in terms of lesson planning, in terms of being able to listen and collaborate with other teachers, is exactly what we need on the board. What's my vision for the board? Why am I running? I'm running because there's a promise of our public schools. And the promise of our public schools is that every student who enters should feel safe when they go to school, should have opportunities when they go to school, should be believed in that they can learn when they go to school, and should graduate prepared for the next steps in life, regardless of what those might be. And currently, we don't succeed at that. We succeed for some students, but not for all. And it is critical to me that we succeed for all students moving forward. I'm Scott Esserman, candidate for Denver Public Schools Board at Large, and I look forward to earning your support tonight.
Thanks, Scott. And I'm going to actually have you be the first speaker for the next question, which is about capacity. Central Park is projected to experience growth in all grades, including early childhood education. What is or are your strategies for managing capacity, increasing access to early childhood education seats, and utilizing a parcel of land that's currently owned by DPS, designated for an additional building north of 56th?
It's a great question and an important question. And I know that historically, part of what's happened in Central Park is that a lot of families in Central Park said there was going to be population growth, and DPS planning came back to them and said, no, it's not going to be that much. And so the neighborhood found themselves in crisis as there was more and more kids and fewer spots. So the strategy for making sure that we continue to have those spots is to plan ahead, is to look down the road, is to consider everything and to use that space that we have available that DPS owns. As you pointed out in the question before you sent it to us, that part of building that is going to be what's going to come out of future bonds. But we also know that part of what built, for instance, the McCullough-Swaggart building was investment from real estate developers, from Forest City and elsewhere. So we're going to have to work with community partners in order to be able to make that sustainable and in order to be able to make that work.
Thank you. Nikki, would you take that question, please? And just a reminder that this is 1 minute or less in your response.
Thank you for the reminder. I would love to take the question. So there's sort of two sides to this that I would like to respond with. Number one, I mean, I think that we need to be open about looking at adjusting the enrollment zone, essentially. Looking at, so I was looking at some of the specific schools where the enrollment is in answering this question. And just looking at the elementary schools, I'm just looking to the side because I got my notes right here. I mean, the lowest ones, Isabella, Bird, and Inspire, are both at about 81%. Just about every other elementary school in the zone is over 100%. And so for us to actually alleviate this problem, I think that we should look at bringing in Ashley, which is my nearest neighborhood school. It's just a couple blocks outside of Central Park, operating at 72% with 118 open seats. Also Smith Elementary in Park Hill, which is operating at 65.4% with over 200 empty seats. We can both free up some seats for Central Park students and build up enrollment at these schools. And then the second part of the question, I'll just wrap up with my last few seconds real quick, is exactly what I was just kind of saying, addressing the greater enrollment crisis. Let's have Park Hill activists, school leaders work with surrounding neighborhoods on their suffering enrollment and, you know, get some evening out, basically. Thank you.
Thank you. Vernon.
Yeah, Carol, thank you for the question. I just served on the CPAC committee with a lot of folks who are on this call, and we grappled with this issue. We looked at the possibilities of not just solving for a Central Park answer, but what might be a regional solution because of capacity issues that we also saw specifically around early childhood education from the Central Park area and also from Montbello. That parcel of land on 56 may be a win-win, not just for Central Park, but could be a win-win for the region if we were to put something there like a early childhood center that could alleviate some of the pressures that both communities are feeling. But I will agree that this is something that we have to be thoughtful about, discuss together as we did on CPAC. And again, listen to all the voices in the room, grapple. But I think we can come to a solution that is not just a community solution, but a regional solution that helps more kids throughout DPS.
Thank you. Hi, Jane, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, and my apologies for my tardiness.
That's okay. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
So did you hear the question
I
about
did not.
capacity? Okay, Central Park is projected to experience growth in all grades, including early childhood education. And we just want to know what your strategy or strategies would be for managing capacity, increasing access to ECE seats, and utilizing a parcel of land that is currently owned by DPS, designated for an additional building north of 56th. And you have a minute or less to respond.
Okay, probably won't take me that long. This is
Okay.
something that I've been trying to get information on citywide, in terms of the number of buildings, what the current enrollment is, and what the whole like Denver geographic plan is, because I really want to understand the needs of each region in relation to the larger whole. But we have to be able to be responsive to growing and or shrinking enrollment issues due to, you know, different kinds of trend movements. And we haven't had anything in place over the last few years. When I reviewed the last bond and mill, I had a hard time figuring out how decisions got made. So I don't feel qualified to answer the question right now, but I would say that it's really critical to engage directly with the community, be very honest and transparent about the entire situation. I think those things have been lacking in decision-making in DPS over the last several years.
Thank you so much. Dr. Silva.
Carol, thank you for this question. I think it's simple. It's poor-paced planning by Denver Public Schools over a generation, by our city and county of Denver over a generation, the lack of the two speaking to each other, the lack of two understanding each other's the needs, and the collectiveness of their disagreements. In order to make this work, I think it's private and public partnerships, right? We cannot go back to our community and say, this is what we need unless there is a systematic plan. And so I agree with the public-private partnerships. When we think about the particular pieces of our community, I love that Nikki brought up the data because I'm a data guy. We have to be able to start to move and aggregate seats where they are. We have to stop pitting the communities together so that people find these different schools attractive. So I think that's the other piece. And then the next component of that is I've worked on the OEC and the creation of the new Office of Early Childhood. And so we have to think about our babies. And so how can we utilize that space? And one way we might be able to pay for it is in partnership with the state and out of Jared Polis's office and the EC Summit that I'm a part of. So I think that's how we're going to get this done.
Thank you. Kristen, do you want to take that?
Sure.
Minute or less.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, when it comes to responding to needs and our growth, it ebbs and flows from neighborhood to neighborhood. We see big booms and then we see shrinks. And so we can't just plan for what a neighborhood needs now and today. We need to plan for what it needs tomorrow. And that is absolutely where Michelle excels, is seeing not just where we are today, but working with community to plan for tomorrow and making sure that all needs are being met. We absolutely need to make sure, and I think Scott was spot on when I feel like Central Park has gone through this sense from the beginning, just constantly waiting for schools to catch up and be able to fit all their kids in. And we need to be able to progressively plan forward for Central Park and meet those needs and work with the community to make it happen.
Thank you. And finally, Jean.
Thank you for this question. Being in the classroom, sending 8th graders off to school from Montbello and Green Valley Ranch, I understand that it's not just Central Park students that are ending up in Central Park schools. I think there's an extreme necessity for us to really look at the entire ecosystem from Central Park, Park Hill out to Green Valley Ranch and understand how we can improve all the schools in that ecosystem so that, as mentioned before, we are divvying up students across a lot of quality options, and there's not an influx of students all trying to choose the William Roberts or the Northfields or the DSST Montview, and creating quality options across the ecosystem. That way we're adequately serving the needs of every single child and families feel comfortable having their children where they are at. And as far as the land above 56, as the community continues to grow on this side of town, it'll be important to continue to keep our pulse on the atmosphere and start planning for a necessity to build a school as necessary.
Thank you. And Jean, I'm going to turn right around and give you the next question. And it's about equity. What does the word equity mean to you in the context of public education? And what does equity look like and sound like at school sites? What are your ideas for implementing equity? And what in particular would you champion?
So equity looks like every child, for me personally, it looks like every child having exactly what they need to focus on learning and being successful in the classroom. I was looking through some of the budgets of the schools on the Northeast in the district, and East has around $7,000 per pupil funding, as opposed to Robert Smith Academy has $13,000-14,000 per pupil funding. And that funding includes meal levies, where that's where you have your art, your whole child support and things like that. And that's depending on it being approved. So one of the things I would hope is that we can move some of those necessary things, especially coming out of the pandemic, like mental health support, social emotional learning, some of the closing those gaps that were missed before and after the pandemic or currently in the pandemic. So all that needs to be a priority for our budgets and making that guaranteed outside of the meal levy so that we can meet the needs of every single child, because they are very diverse needs. I sat in classrooms with students with IEPs and English language learners that spoke no English, all the way up to the other end where kids are on high school level. So we have to meet each one of those needs of our children, and that has to be embedded in the budget.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yeah, thank you. This is such a near and dear subject to Michelle's heart. Her daughter, when she started George in the IB program, her first day walking into that classroom, her daughter was told she didn't belong because she was Black, and the Black kids didn't take IB program classes at George. And Michelle sat there and she fought until that system changed. And it took 6 years, so well beyond her daughter getting through it. And she changed it through working through the systems. And that is absolutely what motivates Michelle. When it comes to equity, she believes in creating a community school model where each school is able to respond to its community's needs, because every community has different needs. And through that model, we're able to meet those. That's really, and creating a safe cultural environment for all kids to grow and learn in. So that is it in a minute.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
Yes, great question. So my doctorate degree is in leadership for educational equity, and my dissertation is on restorative practices and impacts of negative discipline measures on students. And so when I think about equity, for me, it's simple. I'm an equity expert. It's about addressing disparities. And so addressing disparities in the entire ecosystem of our school systems. And so that means doing a forensic audit, top to down, of our HR systems, our curriculum, who's in the classroom, who are leaving and why. Reviewing the forensic audit and creating a framework for restorative practices that are being implemented in schools. There's so many variations of schools. There's still inequity in terms of our discipline and framework models there. I said, and then the last piece I think is, how do we address disparities in resources? How do we move resources? How do we discuss that piece? And so part of that too is looking at schools that have less than 400 students and creating action plans for those schools so that the community and businesses and DPS can be involved. But it's a top-down undress of disparities within the school system. That's what equity is for me in education.
Jane.
I think there's a lot of agreement when we talk about the typical groups. So I want to talk just a little bit about equity in terms of fairness and inclusion. Our narrow accountability system right now is creating very inequitable opportunities for children beyond racial categories, beyond gender categories. We have children who, because they speak a second language, get denied art. We have children who, because they don't automatically do well in a standardized test, miss out on rich and relevant curriculum. We have right now, when you talk about inclusion, we have special education students across the district that are not even getting grade level standards because of the focus on testing and the sort of the carrots and sticks related to that. So when I think about equity, I think about, as was mentioned, every child gets what they need when they need it, but that every child gets a chance to spend a significant portion of their day in their areas of strength. Because right now we tend to punish our kids who don't learn necessarily in the way that we teach. And if we can treat our children as the individuals that they are and assume that they have the talents and the
Carol, I muted her.
Okay, thank you. And Vernon. You're muted, Vernon.
Thanks, Carol. Equity for me is belief. Equity is about behavior. I'm sorry. Equity is about behavior. And so we see within our district that we see a lot of inequity. That means there's misbehavior, right? And so behavior is how we serve kids, how we support kids, how we stand with them. And so equity is behavior, and that behavior is driven by equality, which is about our belief. And so you heard folks talking about, well, we got to get this school up to par so we can be just as acceptable as that. And we got to get this school. What people are saying in those comments is there is an underlying belief about certain places, certain schools, and that same belief is directed towards certain students. So you've got to deal with your belief gap so you can deal with your behavior problems. If you can deal with equality, you can create a system that is more equitable for students. So that we've got a lot of work to do in both areas.
Thank you. Nikki.
So how I would define equity in the context of public education, essentially it's two parts. Equity is serving all students to their unique needs with the goal of preparing every student for their unique version of success in adulthood. Now, what does that look like in terms of pursuing that within DPS? There's a lot of things that we need to be doing to pursue equity on multiple levels, but in this current situation where, from my point of view, we have mass communities, thousands of kids falling through the cracks every year, we need to be looking at resource allocation on the big picture level, because that's what so much of this is about. At the end of the day, it's the inequity that we're seeing that exists already on the community level that's playing out in our schools, which is why we need to have a community-based response. I want to see DPS leadership work with communities around every neighborhood school to make sure the PTA is built up in skilled and community engagement, make sure the collaborative school committees meet regularly and are empowered to weigh in on school issues, and most importantly, a community-based marketing and fundraising plan so that we can address this enrollment crisis from the grassroots. Thank you.
And finally, Scott.
I think it's critical that we can't spend our way to equity, that the only way that we can get equity is what I did in the classroom, which is the top of my syllabus every year. So that at the end of the semester, at the end of the year, every student will be a more competent and capable writer, more competent and capable public speaker. So it starts with that belief. Equity starts with the belief in our children that every student can learn. Because where that leads to and where we see the greatest amount of inequity is in our outcomes, is in who is graduating prepared for their next steps in life. And the way that we address that is by providing the opportunities and the access to arts, to the curricula that we know prepares students to be 21st century thinkers, to have 21st century skills, also to be able to read, to write, whether that's going into an apprenticeship in a union, or going into a job after school, or going into college. They need those skills. We have to provide those skills across the board.
Thank you so much. So Scott, again, I will come back to you after I read this particular statement and question. And this is really just requires a yes or a no.
Oh, Carol, I think we had spoken about giving people like 1 minute for an introduction if they came in late, and one person did.
Oh, good.
So I just wanted to give,
all right.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Please, do you know?
Jane was came in a little late. And so if you would like, Jane, just to take 1 minute as to why it's that first question we asked of everybody, why you are running for the board and what very specific skills and values, et cetera, do you offer as a candidate?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm 34 years in education. So I have worked as a teacher, as a school leader, as a district administrator. I've also spent 7 years developing and implementing a leadership program for educators. So I have worked inside and outside of the system. I spent about 7 years studying organizational development. So the specific skills that I bring are executive level management, a true understanding of systems, how they work, and the ability to coach and supervise executive leaders. I value public education as a public good, and that is the reason I'm running.
Thank you so much. I'm going to skip one question and I'm going to go again 1 minute. This has to do with student needs, and it's, let's see, we're at about 7:11 here. And so let's see how this goes, and then we may go to the chat and see what questions we have there. Jane, I'm going to go to you again. And what are 2 to 3 needs that you believe students and staff require now, given the impact of the pandemic on their learning and social and emotional development, that board members can facilitate? And again, 1 minute.
Okay, I think the number one need is permission to focus. I hear from our teachers, I hear from our principals, and I hear from the kids that they are overwhelmed. There's too much, it is overwhelming, and they feel stretched. Our teachers need to be able to be creative, and they need to be given permission to meet the needs of their children without a lot of top-down mandates. I think second of all, we need arts and physical movement in our schools. There's so much work, research in trauma related interventions that come from the arts. There's incredible work that's been done, and we aren't utilizing that. And I know we have teachers in our schools that are capable of doing that. Third, they need to be able to tell us, and we need to respond with the resources that they need, money, time, or people, to meet the needs. We're hearing of extreme mental illness and mental health challenges that they're facing.
Thank you. Vernon?
Carol, give me the question one more time there.
Sure. What are 2 to 3 needs that you believe that students and staff require now, given the impact of the pandemic on their learning and social and emotional development, that board members can facilitate?
Yeah, one of the things that board members can help with is the allocation of dollars. I mean, we talk about ESSER dollars, we talk about any kind of money that the district is getting in to meet these needs, is that we can ensure that dollars are allocated in ways to actually increase frontline social emotional supports. We can ensure that the monies are going to actually decrease that counselor to student ratio, that are going to putting more nurses on the front lines or putting more social workers on the front lines in our schools. So that's a number one thing. And I think too, as a board, we can ensure that we are helping to craft a vision beyond this current situation, because we have to be able to know where we're going. And so I think the board can deal with the budget, and we can deal with the hope for tomorrow by helping to craft a vision forward for our district.
Thank you. Nikki?
Okay, so 2 to 3 things that the staff and students need in response to the pandemic. I'm going to try to run through these quickly because there are 3 big things. Number one, giving our staff and educators a real voice in long-term decision-making. We way overworked our educators 2 to 3 times their normal hours. It led to an exodus of teachers and DPS and all around the country. It's something that just wasn't nearly talked about enough. I tried to bring attention to it, but it's something that still we need to be talking more about, the burden we put on teachers. So that's the first big one. 2, the impact that COVID has had on women and girls in Denver and all across the world that hasn't been talked about enough. Many women, young women and girls, were forced to forego education and work because they were expected to take part in childcare. That's very unfair. That's a huge issue of equity, and that's something that we can be addressing on a co-governance level to make public childcare options available. And thirdly, standardized testing. Standardized testing, this is a great opportunity for us to massively de-emphasize standardized testing, both in the way that it takes up so much student and staff time, it's a massive waste of money, and it harms our accountability systems by punishing schools in low-income areas. So those are 3 areas I would focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
Thanks, Carol. Our students and our staff and our school leaders are suffering and struggling in ways that we could have never imagined. I've talked to school leaders who have to cover a 5th grade class because they can't find a 5th grade teacher to cover. Every school is short on guest teachers and substitute teachers in such a way that teachers are being forced to cover what's going on in those buildings. I'm talking to parents whose kids are exhausted and who are struggling to be back socially. I was over at George Washington this morning where they were subjected to a significant amount of really hateful graffiti over the weekend, and talked to some of the teachers there. They're wiped out. The one thing that our communities need is they need some help. They need some assistance. They need some grace. They need some space. They need some support. We've got ESSER funds coming. We've got federal funds coming, but money isn't going to fix this. What's going to fix this is us supporting each other, working as communities towards each other. Thank you.
Jean.
So I'm struggling right now, and I think I'm the only actual classroom teacher in this call right now. Like I'm struggling with hearing some of the stories that I've heard from our kids, whether that's deaths in the family, suicidal ideation, isolation. I have a student right now that has COVID, and he's been in his room for a week and a half. Can't even talk to his mother. They have him locked in the room. We just were able to get him a computer where he could chime in, and I hopped on a Zoom just so he could see somebody's face. So we need to make sure our kids have the support they need to deal with those traumas. We need to embed trauma-informed practices into our policies. We need to increase mental health awareness across the whole district so kids know that it's okay to not be okay. And lastly, we need to give teachers the resources necessary in order to thrive in the classroom when we're dealing with so many things beyond just teaching.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think this is an opportunity to reset, right? The machine of DPS has been going for over 100 years, and this gives us an opportunity to reset and reevaluate. I think this gives us an opportunity to let our teachers, educators, and principals know it's okay to be vulnerable, right? It's an opportunity for the community and us to allow them and our students to be vulnerable in this space as we reset. I think we need to be able to focus on helping them understand their own self-awareness in this time of COVID and unassurance. And I think about my friend Alex, who had 5 kids, who died from COVID, and his little girl is 10 years old. And we've been navigating and working with her, and she's unaware of who she is anymore because she was Alex's little girl. And so I think those are some of the pieces of giving us an opportunity to reset, thinking about the social emotional support, and then allocating resources. It does cost dollars, and DPS has the dollars, but we have to allow individuals to be vulnerable and to find themselves again. And it's an opportunity to reset.
Kristen.
Yeah, so mental health, I think, has been just threaded throughout this whole conversation, and it's needed for our students, it's needed for our educators, it's needed for our staff, and it's needed for their families. Everybody experienced trauma in some level since March of 2020, and we have got to make sure that we are ready to learn, and we're not right now. And the staff shortages within our schools are terrifying. I know me, just as a parent, I'm terrified by the staff shortages, and I see that exhaustion. And we have to really be nurturing that. And in order to do that, we need to bring in the funding we need to pay our teachers a living wage, to pay our staff a living wage, and to provide what these schools need, the supports they need throughout, to make sure that it's happening. And we are able to get back on track and absolutely getting rid of standardized testings at the level that we do them.
Thank you. Brian, I want to do a time check. It's about 7:20, and you mentioned we have a couple of questions in the chat. We have a last question, and did you mention other speakers that wanted to contribute here?
We not to the school board, but to the ballot initiative. So you go ahead and take the last 5 or so minutes, Carol.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me take a look at the chat.
I also just want to point out that, Kristen, I just renamed you as speaking for Michelle Quattlebaum for anyone who's joined us late, just to clarify that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. From Mark in the chat, our neighborhood has a unique enrollment zone, and our middle school is also part of a shared enrollment zone. How do you feel about these neighborhood enrollment zones as an alternative to the one school per zone approach in many other areas of DPS?
Where did you say you were starting with that one?
I'll start with you. How about that?
That is perfectly fine. Being actively involved in that. First of all, let me backtrack. I was a kid that we went to school across town. So my biggest thing is making sure that we have quality schools everywhere. All of our kids, and I think I touched on this before, should not have to feel like they hope they get into Northfield. I think there's 125 seats that are allocated for Montbello students. DSST is open enrollment and things like that. But we need to make sure that the resources that those schools do have are being used to create quality options. If we're going to be in this multiple enrollment zone, multiple school enrollment zones, we need to make sure that those options aren't funneled into just a handful, and make sure that the quality is there everywhere. Just because you're in Montbello or a certain neighborhood should not mean that you don't have access to a quality school. We need to make sure we're improving every single school in the ecosystem so that some schools are not pushed to the brink and other schools are being left without. So we need to make sure we're equitable in that regard.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think about my time living in Montbello and being bused all the way to Merrill Middle School because MLK wasn't the right school for me. I think about living in the Sun Valley projects and being bused from the projects to Dora Moore. And there were good traditional community schools within our neighborhood. And so we have to look at these models, right? I think this zone has created interesting issues for us regarding transportation, regarding start times for students. And so it's actually created more barriers. And so as we think about removing barriers, which is and creating equity, which is looking at the disparities, a disparity here is that students aren't able to access these neighborhood schools. And so this is one way in which we can make that happen. I think that in order to make that happen, you need bold leadership that will stand up and speak up for this. And I've done that my entire career. So I think those are some of the facets in which I will look at it. And I will always think about the students and their parents that have multiple jobs that are going from one end of the town to the other, and it's not working right now. And so we have to put our parents first.
Thank you. Kristen.
You know what? I see Michelle just signed on. So I think Michelle is the best person to answer for Michelle. She's
Okay.
here.
Yes.
Hi, Michelle. Welcome.
Hi. Hi. Thank you. Thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone.
So did you hear the question?
So I heard answers, and so we're talking. Can you repeat it, please?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
And we just need a minute. We're gonna use a minute of your time for this. Our neighborhood has a unique enrollment zone, and our middle school is also part of a shared enrollment zone. How do you feel about these neighborhood enrollment zones as an alternative to the one school per zone approach in many other areas of DPS?
Right. Okay. So that's a great question. And I really believe that having served on committees within DPS that looked at when what we were going to do after choice, because school choice was put in place to address when the mandate for mandatory busing ended. One of the things that I noticed is we didn't have enough community involvement in these decisions. So when this is something, if this is something that the community wants because they want other options, then we can go with it. But if we're wanting to make sure that our students are able to stay within their neighborhood, then we need to create the space for that. We need to make sure that every school is a quality school, that every school has educational opportunities for our students.
Thank you. Scott.
So it's interesting because I was part of the history of this, because they were closing Smiley Middle School as my daughter was getting ready to go to middle school. And so when they created the shared Central Park, Park Hill enrollment zone, I was part of that discussion. And part of that was that it was supposed to improve the equity and it was supposed to improve the diversity of those schools. And I don't see that as having happened. I see our schools continuing to be segregated. So I'm not sure that the neighborhood enrollment zones have served their purpose. So it seems to make sense that if we go to a one school per zone approach, that we can build up the communities around those schools. We can build up results around those schools. We can get community invested in those schools, and we can start to listen to community needs, as opposed to what we're currently getting, which is not what was intended to happen and is in a lot of ways problematic.
Thank you. Nikki?
Thank you. So to start off, I mean, I'm not opposed to the enrollment zone concept, the way it's being used in Central Park as a general rule. I don't think that in the context of where DPS is at this point in its history, that it is necessarily the most helpful way to go at this point. I've talked a lot in the last several months, and several of you have probably heard this, that I would really like to see DPS simplify, I mean, very much simplify the choice process, but also make it more consistent as well across the entire city of Denver, largely so that low and middle income parents can more easily navigate the process. As many of you know, a lot of families that have the means to do so will hire a consultant to help them navigate it. And that's, that will exacerbate inequity right there when resources are involved. So I would probably look at redrawing some of the lines a little bit. I think that the number one issue in DPS is this enrollment crisis district-wide. I think that since Central Park is kind of experiencing a little bit of the opposite of that, let's take advantage of the opportunity for Central Park to help some of the neighboring communities with their enrollment issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Vernon?
Thanks, Carol, for the question. I agree with, Scott and I agree on this one where we talk about, are the enrollment zones serving the purpose that they were designed to? So it's to what end are we drawing these enrollment boundaries? For example, in Westerly Creek, 30% minority, at William Roberts, 28% minority. And so we ask ourselves, are we generating the school populations that we want to see with these enrollment boundaries? Yes, it gives kids a guaranteed seat at one or more schools, but does it help us to achieve what we might see as our long-term vision as a district when we talk about inclusion and we want our kids to learn side by side? Those are the kind of conversations that we need to have. And then as we make policies, we need to make policies that align to that end based on the schools that we want. And God bless our friends at the Choice Office who have to deal with explaining to hundreds of parents every choice cycle what an enrollment zone is and which one they're in. So it can be very confusing to parents. So we need to improve that as well.
Thank you. And finally, Jane.
One of the reasons I'm running for the board is because the system in DPS is incoherent and it is wasteful and it's not working. So I look at this as I look at enrollment zones, and they're incongruent with the ideas behind school choice. You're going to get assigned, but you have a choice. And so the whole system is in trouble. I don't think we should have a system where we say that some schools are not good enough for some kids or some schools are not working for some kids. I think that school choice is an illusion, and that the spin and the marketing on how successful it's been needs to get called out.
Thank you. And finally, very quickly, minute or less, I'd like to know why you think you are the best candidate for this position, District 4 or the at-large candidate position. And let's start with Scott. This is our final question.
Thank you. I think I'm the best person for this because of the combination of qualities that I bring to this. I think it's also interesting, if you look at who's endorsed me across the board, it's a wide variety of voices. You can't look at just one endorser. You have to look at the fact that it's Phil Weiser, but it's also Joe Salazar. It's RTD Director Chantel Lewis, but it's also City Councilwoman Amanda Sawyer. That it's members of our communities, that it's people that I've taught, that it's people that I've taught with, that there's a wide variety of people. And that one of the biggest problems that we face in DPS, and I don't think we can deny this, is the divisiveness between adults, the divisiveness between neighborhoods. I believe that I'm the person that can bring that to a different place. I believe that I'm the person that is capable of and has proven experience listening to community, that as a parent and as an educator, I would be your most outstanding next at-large board member.
Vernon.
Thank you all again for this evening. I stand out as a Black father, son of a Black teacher, somebody who's been in this work in our community, like I said, since 2002, working as a volunteer in our community schools, coming up through an alternative path to become a teacher and to become a school leader, and having worked on in community to make some of these tough decisions. I mean, CPAC, oh my goodness, there's 28 folks on our subcommittee, and we had to navigate those personalities. And that's what it's like. You got to step into the space. You got to believe in your neighbors. You got to believe in the possibilities of students. And that's what I've given my life to. I'm ready for this opportunity, having worked in traditional schools, charter schools, innovative schools, as an employee, as a leader, and as a parent. And we're ready to hit the ground running, having relationships with senior leadership staff, relationships with key folks in the district. We're ready to get the job done for our students. So jonesfordenver.com, we would appreciate your support.
Jane.
I understand systems. I understand systems as a conceptual frame, but I also understand the education system and how it works. I've worked inside of the bureaucracies of public education. I am a very conceptual thinker, and I'm also very analytical. So those two things together give me sort of a superpower in terms of being able to see the architecture, how something's designed, and where the structural changes need to be made that will actually result in sustainable change. I have done transformational work, so I do have a track record of success in education, raising the achievement for students, building and developing talent. And I don't have a lot of endorsements. I am not, I'm an independent, and I will come into this race with no strings attached.
Nikki?
Over the last several years, Denver Public Schools has become entrenched in a movement that has been characterized by corporatist, pro-privatization, and resegregationist policies. And unfortunately, after the last 2 rounds of DPS elections, where the community in both cases overwhelmingly expressed their will to go in another direction, to go in a neighborhood school direction, to go in an equity direction, unfortunately, Denver Public Schools has not followed the community's lead. And so that is exactly why I'm running. I believe that we need someone on the DPS board who will aggressively seek to make major change to protect neighborhood schools and fight privatization, to address this enrollment crisis and all of these major issues that are hitting DPS. Yes, we have a pandemic, but we can no longer use that as an excuse to not address all of these huge issues. We can do both at the same time. We can do it on the community level. That's what I've been doing for years now. I've proven my ability to fight privatization at the highest levels, and I hope that I can earn your support. Thank you so much.
Michelle.
Thank you. Yes. So as a mother of 3 DPS students, I have a unique perspective. I sent my children to, had to make the choice of sending my children to a private, public, charter, district run. We've experienced them all. I understand what a family goes through. As a Black mother, I bring a perspective. As a Black woman, I bring a perspective that has always been on the school board since Rachel B. Knoll, in the form of people like Dr. Sharon Bailey and Representative Jennifer Bacon. And I'm doing the work. I haven't just done the work, I'm doing the work right now, today, in one of our largest comprehensive high schools that was faced with all of the challenges that we've discussed today. So I'm doing the work.
Dr. Silva.
First and foremost, CPUN, thank you both so very much. I think the reason why I'm running and why I'm the best, most qualified candidate is because my storied career of being able to get things done. I am running because for the last 24 years, we have seen what division has done to Denver Public Schools. I think Gene is a fine man. I don't know Michelle as well, but I think the representation of who they are supported by, we need change. And so as the independent candidate, a Democrat, running to hold the entire system accountable, I bring a different lens than both two of those different factions. And I think that's what sets me apart. My skilled excellence, my eye for equity, my budget fiscal management skills, but most importantly, I've been living this work. I think about the food pantry at George Washington High School. Our foundation actually donated backpacks to them for the last couple of years, not this year, but in previous years. And Jonelle Herndon, a community advocate, is supporting me. Albus Brooks, I think about Dr. Val Flores. People that don't even get along have come together and coalesced around me. People from all sides of the factions are supporting me. And so I'm the most well-rounded candidate, but I think I have the most experience to lead on day one, and no one will own me. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying that I'm an independent voice and my money speaks for me. Thank you.
And finally, Jean.
When I chose to run, I ran on committing to the communities that need our service the most. Everybody that I talked to, whether you're talking about teachers union or any other interested party, I told them the same exact thing. And that is that I'm a tireless advocate and have continued to be that for quite some time, whether it's my work with Shop Talk Live, uplifting the community in a variety of ways, teaching in the community, coaching flag football, basketball, soccer, doing tutoring, Honorable Protector Initiative, where I'm lifting up young Black men to be better. All those things are possible. I have policy experience with over almost 10 years in the public sector with community planning and development, Colorado Department of Labor, TANF supervisor, workforce development. I've also testified on behalf of the House Bill 1010, which just passed this last year, and wrote a policy recommendation for the retention of teachers of color. So my experience and my tireless dedication to the communities that go underserved is exactly what we need on the school board, because if we meet those underserved communities, then this district as a whole improve, and every single metric that we need gets better.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for being here. Again, you are incredible in terms of your level of energy and stamina and dedication, and we appreciate you all 7 of you. Thank you for being here. And Brian, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Oh, Carol, could we just do the quick yes/no question about the?
Amanda, we need to move on.
We do.
Sorry.
All right. Okay.
We are 15 minutes over.
Thank you.
So thank you to all the candidates. The next agenda item before we move into our board meeting is we do allow for public comment. And I know there were a couple of ballot initiatives that we're going to send representatives to speak this evening. If you would like to make a public comment, please say something and we'll recognize you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Elbert Wedgeworth, and I'd like to give a warm welcome to Central Park United Neighbors. I'm here on behalf of the Rise Denver campaign, which is 2A through 2E. It'll be on the ballot for November 2nd. It's a $450 million investment in critical infrastructure across Denver, which covers 88 projects, but more importantly, will give us unlimited possibilities for Denver's future. So 2A through 2E, what will it do? It will deliver improvements for every city council district, power our economic recovery and create jobs, invest in historically underserved neighborhoods, and help people that need it the most. We want to keep Denver vibrant and diverse, and also the active city that we love. But we can do all of those things without our tax rate, well, keeping our tax rate the same. I'd like to just briefly talk about each ballot initiative. 2A covers city facilities, and to give you an example, we're talking about building 2 libraries in historically underserved neighborhoods of Globeville and Westwood, improve the Denver Zoo, Museum of Nature and Science, Botanic Gardens, and the Buell Theater, and also upgrade the different buildings we have in the city based on the Americans with Disabilities Act. 2B covers housing and sheltering. This is to acquire the 48th Avenue shelter, which currently serves 600 people experiencing homelessness. and also purchase 300 hotel motel rooms to expand at the promising housing program that we have. 2C covers transportation and mobility, and this is to fund transportation and safety improvements for pedestrians and cyclists across the city. And we also want to make sure that we can reconstruct Morrison Road as one of the other project examples and continue with our sidewalk construction across the city. 2E covers parks and recreation, transforming Sloan's Lake Boathouse into a 6,000 square foot community and event space. Also fixing Curtis Park Pool in 5 Points neighborhood, and repair many of the sport courts and fields across the city also. And finally, 2E covers the National Western facilities. And that's to renovate the historic 1909 building into a public market, supporting the neighbors, local businesses, and creating a hub for local, fresh, healthy, and affordable food. And also providing a community investment fund benefiting Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea neighborhoods. And primarily to preserve the National Western Stock Show for future generations. So I hope that you will seriously consider supporting 2A through 2E. We're invested in Denver's future, and we hope that you can support us with that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the board meeting?
Yes, this is Martha King. I would really like to speak up and thank the school board candidates. I'm impressed with all of you. I wish I could vote for all of you. And I especially appreciate your passion and expertise, and especially in this day and age when school board members have been attacked all over the country for stepping up for public health with mask mandates and vaccine mandates, or the conspiracy theories related to critical race theory. It's a tough time to step forward and say, I want to be a member to represent all of us. So even if you're not elected, please remain engaged. We need you all, and thank you so much for this forum.
Thank you, Martha. All right, with that, I'm not going to give everybody a break since we are running behind. So we'll just move into the board meeting. And our first agenda topic is committee updates. So Mark, I don't know if you want to give an update on communication and outreach.
Yes, we have a community survey in the works. Our goal for that is to put that out start collecting responses starting November 1st. We'll be talking about that later. And I think that's the key criteria. And we're pretty close to having, from the fundraising side, most of our sponsorships lined up for through the end of the year. So we'll soon turn to focusing on 2022 soon.
Thanks, Mark. Mandel or Shalise, do you want to talk about the DE&I committee? Did I lose?
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
So we did not meet in our last meeting, but we are celebrating the fact that we did get enough signatures to include Aurora in the Central Park United Neighbors board. So we're celebrating that effort because we wanted to make sure that we were indeed representing equality. And so that's pretty much all we have for now.
Okay. Carol, you took an hour and 10 minutes for education. Do you have anything else you want to update us on? Carol, are you on mute?
Just to say that Dana Hoffman from Dottie will be at our next Safe Streets Committee meeting. Thank you.
So that's Safe Streets, not education?
Safe Streets Committee and education. I am engaged in conversations with elementary school principals as to what they need from the community.
Okay. And then Jack, do you have anything for health and safety?
No report. Thank you, Brian.
All right. And for sustainability, Mark, I don't see Brad. I think Brad is home on maternity leave or paternity leave. Brad or Mark, do you have anything for sustainability?
Yeah, my co-chair had a baby, so we're a little bit short-staffed right now. So if anybody else wants to join the sustainability committee, that'd be great. But soon we'll be wrapping up everything with our harvest mapping project, and it looks like we actually made some good inroads on that with the city, where we'll be joining a roundtable at some point over the winter on how to advance using our city forest as potentially a source of food going forward. So we'll have more news about that in the fall, or in the spring, excuse me.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. And thanks everybody for the quick updates. We might actually get back on schedule. Next agenda item is our bylaw change update. So Mark, if you can advance forward. So we have received what the necessary 100 signatures on petitions for 3 bylaws changes. The first bylaw change expands our CPUN board to a maximum of 19 people. We are at 15 now. The second one expands the geographic footprint of CPUN to include the Aurora section. And so that will include the whole development now, and we will represent them on the CPUN board. And then the last one was the petition was signed a couple of months ago to expand the officer role to include the role of former president. And so we did receive the signatures, and we will be bringing it to a community vote at our next meeting on November 16th. And that will be part of our board meeting at 7:30.
Hey, Brian, I have a question about that.
Yep.
I know as part of the city, I believe we have a requirement that our those kinds of community meetings have a sort of a vote threshold we need to hit. And I worry that if we put it as part of our board meeting, we're not going to meet that because we have to have like a minimum number of community votes in that vote, I believe, to be, that's like one of the few city requirements. So is there a particular reason we're putting that in the board meeting when it's supposed to be a community vote, not a board vote?
I would have to defer to Jeff, who is out of the country, but yeah, I think as a board, we can move it into the community meeting if we feel that's the best thing.
Okay, thanks. I'll follow up with him.
Yep. So it will be at the next meeting. So we will be putting that information in our next mailing. Any other questions for that?
What is the minimum number of votes? I guess what is the vote threshold for those balloted or not the bylaw changes?
So I'm not sure of the city requirement, but our bylaws state that it has to be, we have to have, and I will answer that question. Go ahead, Mark.
I believe the city requirement was something like 25 people or something like that, but we'd have to double check. And then our
okay, because I know it's like a 2/3 super majority to pass, but
66%.
I didn't know there were absolute numbers that all a minimum number that needed to be met too.
I believe the city has a requirement that we have a minimum number of votes or voters, and then it's a 66%. So it's not technically 2/3; it's a little bit less than 2/3.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Though technically we're also supposed to wait 30 days from announcing it, and we're not at 30 days on the 16th, so we may have to revisit that as well.
Mark, we announced the vote in the last. My understanding was that we announced the vote would be happening in November, in the last email. Okay. So that's how we meet the 30 days.
Okay, I'll confirm that. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Mark, I know the the question, the next agenda item is around the survey and just getting feedback from the board members on if they felt that there was anything else. And you had the survey, you were going to pull it up. We can kind of walk through it section by section. And Mark, while you're doing that, are you doing that, Mark?
I'm trying to. I think I have to stop sharing and then restart. Hold on.
Yeah, you do. Sorry.
Very friend. Like I tried to do that before and it wouldn't let me. There we go.
Okay. So Mark, I don't know, do you want to walk through it, or the first section is just on residency. Where in the neighborhood are you? And then the demographics.
Yeah, I'm happy to do so quickly, mostly where there's notes and where I know there's a few questions. I don't think I received personally all of the questions that were sent. So if each committee can sort of let me know when we get to their section if there's something that's missing. Because I know I heard from the Health and Safety Committee, and we've had sort of a little bit of a email dialogue in the last day that I can put into a later section later. But yeah, up front, we have a variety of questions here. We've got a couple, I think, hanging notes about some of these questions about the LGBTQ community. I don't know if those have been resolved yet or not.
Yes, they've been resolved.
Okay, so is this the language we're going with right here?
Yes.
Okay. So because I was reading through it, I had a question about this one, which obviously is not related to that, but about disability, because it says which of the following best describes your disability status, but it doesn't have it has an NA, but I wasn't sure why we're asking everybody that. It seems like there should have been a follow-in question to that one. Does anybody know where that came from? Because I don't think it was there before.
Maybe just add of if any, which if any.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Well, at the beginning, but okay.
Sorry, I was double checking to make sure we didn't ask age twice. So we've got a variety of questions. Okay. And then the second section gets into just sort of some, satisfaction with the community, mostly related, I think, to being able to compare these year after year to see if anything we're making progress on or backtracking on. And don't hesitate to speak up if you want me to stop, because usually going through a survey of this length would take an hour or two, and I don't want to spend that long on it. So I'm going to kind of go quickly. Some of these questions that are seemingly long about students in school are kind of the language we've been using in the past. So again, it helps to use a similar scale going forward. This one with a note about a Likert scale, Amanda and I will make sure that shows up appropriately in the final document, or I will, but it doesn't say it right there exactly. But and I want to make sure too that, for these education committee ones, that the education committee is comfortable, for example, with these questions. If you guys haven't reviewed them yet, you should all. I'll put the link in the chat too, so that if I'm scrolling too quickly, you can all see it. I can't get to that. Well, I'll have to do it later unless somebody else can do it, because I can't do it right now.
I can do it, Mark.
Thanks. Then we've got a few questions about capacity issues and Northfield High School and factors regarding the school choice process. This section where it says package thefts at the top, I think we're going to change that so that it reflects the fact that we also have something here about Dick's Sporting Goods Park, but also just some safety questions that the Health and Safety Committee asked. And I'll work on finalizing language for that with them this week. Let's see, safety. There's some sustainability questions that I think I picked. And then here's something about like what topics we should cover, familiarity. And I think that's pretty, most of them. There was project question.
Hey, Mark, I was wondering, when are we planning to send out the survey, and how long do we typically have it out in the community before we close it?
So we were thinking sending it out November 1st and closing it right around Thanksgiving. It's always good to have a deadline, or an email that goes out right before the deadline, and an email goes out announcing it. So that's kind of the plan. I think Thanksgiving's like 25th, I believe, this month or the next month for this year. So that gives us, about 3 to 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks, which I think is long enough. But if there's, strong interest in keeping it open longer than that, we potentially can. We just want to make sure that it's closed in time for us to have time before the end of the year to do something with the data. And then in terms of distribution, it'll go out by email, but we're also going to work on a plan to get it regularly in social media as well, because I've definitely noticed the more social media engagements we get out there, or more sharing we get out there, the more engagement and signups we get on our website.
And Mark, we should probably send it to Diane and see if they will put it in one of their weekly mailings too.
Yeah, we can definitely do that too. And
Have we checked with them to see if they have anything that they would like for us to add?
I haven't been leading that part of the process, so I don't know. Jeff would know.
Okay.
We can double check, Amanda.
And will we have, after this is programmed into SurveyMonkey, can we just pilot and make sure it doesn't exceed 10 minutes?
I mean, I think it probably does, because we have questions about like Facebook moderation and stuff like that here still. But the question would be, what are we going to cut if we do?
I mean, we
Yeah,
just
I think
received so much negative feedback after the last survey that it was too long, and we declared that we would make an effort to not have it be that long next time. I feel like we should probably make that effort.
Okay, so we still then, that's always the hard part. What do we want to cut?
I mean, after it's programmed, perhaps we can.
Yeah,
we
waiting
can
until the
see at
last
that
minute
point.
is not the ideal strategy for cutting it, considering we have time right now that we're using it imminently to decide what we would potentially cut.
Okay.
I can definitely identify a few questions, and my suggestion would be, since we've asked about Facebook moderation before, to cut that, because I don't think we have to re-ask those kinds of things. But if others have other ideas, that's fine. I just don't know why we would expect those numbers to necessarily change. Like, I could see why our crime rate being a concern would change, or other issues, but attitudes toward Facebook moderation, I'm not as convinced that that would change. So I would suggest cutting that section. But
Yeah, our page hasn't been that active in recent weeks, so I don't think that that's that strong of a item for us.
I mean, is there a way for someone, I don't know, Mark, if you would be willing to take on a task like this, and you're doing a lot, obviously, but if someone could just say, hey, maybe these are the questions we could potentially cut, and then the board could just do a quick email vote on it. I agree with Amanda that shorter should be a goal if we can reach it in any way.
I'm happy to suggest some stuff, but I didn't write a bunch of the questions, so I'm not sure how that will be taken. But I'll check in with Jeff about it when he gets back.
I've already got an email to you and Jeff and Carol with the questions, so we can follow up when Jeff's back in town.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably put 28 on there as a this one about what should we include as speakers, as a would be nice but isn't necessary. So if we're too over, but the main issue is just figuring out how long they are, because I've taken many test surveys, and my time always comes in much shorter than shall we say, the average survey taker's time. So for example, on a typical, well, I don't know, I guess we don't really have this, the question numbers noted in a way that identifies exactly how many questions we have. So I'm not sure how many we have. But if it goes up to 37 and we've got all these little in-between questions, we're probably closer to a 15-minute survey than a 10-minute, which means we would have to cut about a third of it. So, okay.
So Mark, are you putting in SurveyMonkey, or Jeff is when he gets back?
I don't know what Jeff's plan is, but I volunteered a couple times, but he's never said yes. So
right.
We need to figure that out when he gets back.
Okay. Any other questions? Any committees that feel like they need more representation or less representation in the survey? Going once, going twice. Mark, don't reshare. I'm going to share something real quick.
Right.
Going to the next agenda item. We want to share the beautiful design of our grocery bag that Mandel is working on. Mandel, I don't know if you want to give an update if you're still here. Amanda, I'd love to say.
I am still here. I wasn't quite ready for that last update. I was in the midst of doing a bunch of things, but I'm certainly ready now to comment on this bag. We wanted to have a simple design and something that people would be able to use, whether it's at the grocery store, just in general. And so I just took the logo here and put it on this bag. I've got a few different companies that we're going to be sourcing the bag from directly, the manufacturer. So I'm waiting on some samples, but that's the design that we came up with. And, you know, we have a budget, but we'll see what happens with the samples and with the quotes. But the instead of going through like a local design company or a local what's the word, a local company, we're going directly to the manufacturer, so it's going to keep the cost down quite a bit. So we'll give an update as soon as we get that get those samples back that we can take a look at. Jeff Ederer had some samples previously and those samples were not up to par. So once we get these, then we'll make a decision and then we'll have some information for the board in terms of numbers.
Would you, I love it, completely love it. Did you think about using the dog on the bike instead of the grocery cart?
The dog on the bike, I did not.
Do you think that would, I mean, you have a better eye for this, so just think about that and decide on your own, and we don't have to talk about it.
Okay, I'm certainly open to it. I just don't know what you're talking about.
Are you referring to the one that we brought up with the bike lanes, Amanda?
Yeah, the one that'll be going on to the bike lanes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't think about that.
I mean, the grocery carts, it's appropriate too. I mean, the dog is great, but the grocery cart looks good as well. I honestly, I think it looks fantastic. I couldn't be more impressed with it.
Really good.
I think it looks great too. I think, Mandel, we could have both technically on it. The dog on the bike and the grocery cart potentially.
I put those bags like in my panniers, those little baskets on the back of the bike, which is the only thing that made me think of like the dual purpose. But not everyone has those on the back of their bikes. But it's, I mean, I don't even want to change anything because it just looks really good.
And I think the other thing, Amanda, that we've talked about is we are not going to get a sponsor for the bag itself, but we will ask for sponsors for inserts into the bag as we distribute them to residents. So that's the approach that the Outreach Communications Fundraising Committee decided on.
I think that's great. So the logos are just in the bag and it's a cleaner exterior. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So more to come as we get the samples, but Mandel has been doing a fantastic job with getting them, reaching out all the way to China and getting emails from some vendors in China.
Yes.
Unexpected responses.
Yes, for sure.
So just, the commitment was we do a treasurer's report. The current reserve, so the current cash balance we have is about $8,800. The fundraising committee numbers keep going up. We're at $2,100. In addition, we did get support to support the D&I survey. So we are, and the remaining $1,600 from the foundation is basically what we're planning on to use for the grocery bags. Any questions?
Did that gift card winner ever get their gift card?
Shalice, you were doing that, right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The DE&I survey gift card winner?
Yeah, so I've reached out to her several times and she has not responded. I was going to purchase the gift card from Amazon online and have it sent directly to her home with a tracking address. But I was waiting on a response for that.
Did we ever get the $3,000 from the foundation? Is that the $1,600? Is that what's left from the $3,000, or is that different?
Yeah, no, we got all the $7,000 this year from both the foundation, Brookfield, and the Central Park Business Association.
Well, what about 3,000 from the MCA?
We did not ask the MCA for any money yet this year, Amanda.
Can we ask for it and put it into those bags?
That'd be a lot of bags.
We have not. I would encourage you to attend the communications committee and we can discuss that, but the decision was we were gonna hold back on the MCA ask this year.
As long as it's something that you guys have discussed and that was your decision, then that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an oversight.
It was not an oversight. Okay. With that, I think we are at the end of our agenda. I won't say anything to Jeff that I was able to, start late and get finished, but we did have a light agenda. Is there anything else that we didn't cover?
I think just in following up with those, having listened, this is just a comment on the school board forum. It sounds like a lot of the people that are running for school board don't know what our enrollment zone is. And I wonder if that's something that we should address with them as we follow up. I can talk about this with Carol, but do you guys want to use a couple of minutes to go over anything else that perhaps came out of that at large, or is this, would a different time be better for this sort of discussion?
I don't think we need a discussion, but I do think as an education committee member, we can take that offline and say how could create a way to compose a thank you for attending. And here are some key issues that we want them to be considerate of regarding our community, because they are the at-large members are looking at DPS at large. Those who are in our district are looking at our neighborhood as well as others, and they're not as steeped in the realities as we are. So I think we can use our follow-up thank you as an opportunity to teach them.
I like that idea, Jay.
Also, Carol, just wanted to say that was a really terrific event there and very well moderated. So thank you.
Yeah,
Very
thank you.
well done.
I want to say the same. I was like, you were like a boss. Like people were on time. They knew their order. They knew how long they had. It was incredibly well run. Kudos, Carol.
I just thought about it as my middle school classroom.
I'm gonna go fill out my ballot. So thank you. I've been waiting on that. This is
Yeah,
really late for me to
same.
vote.
I literally got mine off tonight. I was so excited.
I like.
Yeah, Carol, you did an excellent job on that. I definitely enjoyed your moderation and all the candidates.
Thank you. And I was, there were a number of questions that we didn't have time to have answered, but I was going to follow up with a couple of things. So I like the whole notion. I was going to do a thank you note, but I like the suggestion that you made, Jay, and inserting that, you know, embedding some questions into the thank you.
Mark,
just
is that?
Consider, right? Here are some things we'd like you to consider.
Sure.
And follow-up questions that we'd like to send to the community. That way we really position ourselves as that positive advocate and conduit to getting information to our citizens.
I will contact committee members and get your collaboration with that. So thank you.
Hey, Mark, is this something we could share in the email? Because since we tape it, is it easy to send that link? Because I think people would really benefit from watching that if they have no idea who they want to support on the school board.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks for watching the email.
And we did actually
comments for the email too, because I'm going to send you an email tomorrow anyways, asking for any content for the email, but that will be the highlight is the recording and the school board thing. So.
And we did actually get an email today from one of the other RNOs that wanted to publicize our recording of it. So we did actually get quite a good response, and hopefully people will watch the recording. We also got Tay to join the meeting for a while too. I don't know if you noticed that. Tay
Yeah.
Anderson.
Yes, he had a question in the chat, but we just didn't get to it.
That's fine.
Is there a way to track how many people watch something if we put in the email, or is that too complicated? I know we track how people that open the emails.
Yeah, we'll be able to see all 5 people who watch it.
Yep.
Oh, I think it could be more if we publicize it right, because I would have watched something like that. No, I mean, it's great, and hopefully lots of people will watch it.
I would hope so too, but knowing what I do about politics, I would put the over under at 10.
10 extremely important people though.
Channel, and instead of having it just be recorded, not that we'd have a lot of YouTube activity, but that we would have our own YouTube channel for events like these, so that we can upload the video to YouTube, then distribute it via that, and we'd have better viewing analytics and easier distribution. I don't know, just a thought.
We already have a YouTube channel, and that's exactly where I'm going to put it.
Oh, okay, great. See, to your point of
It depends on when I can hit stop recording on this meeting, and get it downloaded and then uploaded. So
perfect.
So are you going to put the whole thing on there, or are you going to edit it out?
I'm going to put the whole thing on there, and then including this conversation right now.
Okay, great.
I'm going to put a shortcut in the email to the part about the school board discussion.
Okay.
And then that's the extent of my editing. Oh, wait, somebody's talking. But he's on mute.
Who was?
I don't know. It doesn't got the names for me right now. Sorry.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Yes, Steve.
I found the presentation excellent. I always have a problem knowing who to vote for on these local elections. And the school board program that you put on was extremely informative. And I would encourage you to consider for elections for judges doing the same thing, if that's possible. So many people that I I mean, I look at who are the judges and I don't know who any of them are. And yeah, I can read the bios and so forth, but this was outstanding. And if you can foster this type of format for other elections, that would be great. I think it's a great community service.
Yeah, especially because we're a year and a half away from a open mayor's race and half of city and an open city council race in May of 2023. So this will be a good format for that as well, because it's going to be an interesting election. So.
I think the good news is that it's hard sometimes to get candidates to commit to be in a place, and with COVID and the Zoom technology, doing it this way actually is more efficient, and I think it gets a wider audience. We can record it and broadcast it. So now that we have the ability to use the Zoom license of the city, we could do these types of things and advertise them. So Stephen, we'll take that back to the communication and outreach committee.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. It is 8:17. I'm going to make last call. If not, I will give everybody back 13 minutes and have a good meeting, or have a good evening. And we will talk to everybody next month.
Well done, team.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.